Okay, we changed the pressure. We're going to do the pressure at a little higher pressure this time and a little lower pressure. Here we go. Now it's dispensing. It's looking for the 50 psi. As soon as it's, there you go. Now it's gone. It went back in. The pressure dropped. Come back up. It came back up and it dropped. So I'll try to clog it off with my finger. It's pretty hot, actually. So I'm going to try to, now I've got it. Okay, Paul. Alright, that's good. Okay, well, the last part of this, we want to show you how to build your recipe and show your recipe. Right now, there's only one recipe in here. But to do the recipe, you have to go into the setup window. Normally it's logged out. You have to go in and put the password in. 2, 3, 4, 5 again. And that's going to let you go back to the systems window. And now you go to the recipe function. So now it says recipe 1. If you want to do another recipe, you push next. You notice it says recipe 2. If you want to rename that, you can rename it any way you want to by just touching it and punching in what you want to call it. So right now we're going to leave it at recipe 2. So what you also need to do now is put your total, enter your parameters that you're looking for this recipe. Put flow rate, put your high pressure where you want it to shut down. Right now, typically these things are at 50 psi, and the recovery is sometimes around, let's say 30. The weight is high grams. We always enter the numbers 3,200, 32,000, and the reason for that is until you establish the parameters of the weight that you want. Because if you put 600 grams in there, when it sees 600 grams, it's going to stop pumping. Low is the same thing. If it gets down to such a low, so we always put 0 at that point. And enter that. Timeout is that if it runs a certain time, if it hasn't reached any of these parameters, it'll time itself out, which right now it'll time out at 0. So we always keep that high until you decide what number you want to put in there. You can put any kind of number you want to in there as far as the seconds are concerned. So you know how to name it. You enter your parameter. Always put right now until you decide you want something different in here. This gives you capability later on to put a heavy weight. If it sees that, it'll shut down, or a low weight. If it's not good enough, it'll alarm and give you an alarm that this happened. Timeout, you want to go 32,000 seconds because it gives you enough time to run through your parameter. Okay, so once you do that and you log out, you now have recipe 2, and the recipe 2 is saved. That's the way you set your recipes. So your total flow rate right now is set at 500 grams. If you want, once the mold starts filling up, this will actually slow down by itself, so not to so rapidly cycle in and out. You'll actually see that slow down, but you can change that if necessary. The cabinet temperature, this is where you'll see where the cabinet temperature is. You have that in your setup window. In the cabinet temperature right here is the cabinet. We've got it set at 150. The resin hose is at 150. You can see that right here. The resin hose is at 149. That's actual. Cabinet temperature is 151. The head pressure, that is the pressure out at your head, out at the mix head. This is the pressures that you got it set to, that you have logged in to these numbers here. That's where it's activating from head pressure. Pump pressure is the high pressure shutdown that's in this window. And the resin is going to shut down at 600 and the curing agent at 400. That's just limitations. Those can be changed as well by just punching a number in. So back to the systems window, we know current fill is going to actually time out how much time you've gone through. Currently it's going to tell you how many grams that you actually pumped in at this time. Your head pressure is your cycle pressure to maintain on your mold. Pump pressure is the system pressure operating. This is the flow rate that it's looking for those set points. This flow rate is the flow meter readout for each product. These are the set points for that 500 grams. So there again, the ratio is 4:1. So that's probably what you're seeing there. Flow rate. You can change the parameters in the setup window. Right now it's set up 100 to 25 parts per inch. It's 4:1. What you'll see is 400 and 100. There again is your flow rate from your flow meter. Pump pressures, the system pressure. This is your head pressure for your mold. Cabinet temperature, heated hose temperature, curing agent parts per million. parts per 100. Current fill time is telling you the time it took to do this and how much product went into the machine. And that's it. To let you know how to start the shot, you put this in the mix mode. When you push it in mix mode, you have to push the pedal to start the dispense. But you can push that. If you don't have this in the mix mode, it will not work. So to start dispensing into your mold, hit mix. It'll stay there if it's running. If it's not running, it keeps going back to that. When you put it in mix mode, you put the pedal in here and go. The anti-gel you can turn on and off if you want it to, if you need that. Product fill turns on the diaphragm pumps, and the level sensors turn off that. So that's turning on the diaphragm pump. That's turning off the diaphragm pump. So that puts you in the mix mode. Your pedal starts working. To turn it off, when you're running, it'll be in the mix mode. To stop the mold fill, put that back in recirculation, and then the whole system stops. It just starts going in recirculation. It starts running in recirculation at that point of the game. This is a bypass pressure. If you get to the 50 psi and you decide at the end of that mold that you want to go to a higher pressure, you can change this. You can say you hit bypass. You can bump that up if you want to say, oh, well, we want to go on up to 80 psi. So you say, okay, now it's going to go on up. It's going to override your settings in your recipe and go up to 80 psi. This turns on the agitator. This turns it on, turns it off. This turns on the heat, turns it on, turns it off. This turns on, going from mix to recirculation. This is anti-gel. This turns on the diaphragm pump. And recipe. This tells you the usage rate. This window tells you how much you've used over a course of time. Setup window, you know about that. Systems window, it's the screen. This is where you always run the machine from, and always run it in automatic when you're mixing. Because when you put it in the manual mode, it turns the alarms off. It turns the ratios off and everything. So always run it when you're running process and you're running production, always keep it in the auto mode.